Good evening. Let's talk about the Lovelock Cave. So, the Lovelock Cave, a lot of people have brought it up in the last week or so, week and a half, since I kind of started talking about giants. And a lot of people have been curious. And I had heard the story of the Lovelock Cave years ago. I believe it was on Coast to Coast AM or something. I'm talking like 10 or 15 years ago. Then a little while back, a few years ago, there was kind of some talk. I think I heard it on Sasquatch Chronicles and a few other people talking about them, especially about how some evidence was destroyed, which we'll talk about. But I've heard a few people bring it back up again. So I wanted to make an official video about it. And here we go. The Lovelock Cave is in northwestern Nevada, in the middle of nowhere off of Highway 80. It's near the town of Lovelock, small little town. And it's pretty classic, dry, desert, hot area. Highway 80, which I drove a long time ago, kind of brings you through all the salt flats. It's basically between Salt Lake City and Reno. It kind of cuts across, and it is the longest, straightest, boringest drive you've ever seen. But Lovelock's a little place along the way there. And the geography and geology of the place is kind of interesting. It's a pretty normal looking cave. It opens up pretty wide on the inside. There's quite a bit of room. But what's remarkable is all the artifacts that they found. And I guess back in the day, we're talking thousands of years ago, it looked much different in the area. If you look at the Great Salt Lake, was once a big giant lake and was part of the ocean and slowly reducing down, and the salinity was there. The landscape in North America, not even that long ago, just a couple tens of thousands of years ago, with all the ice ages, the Lovelock Cave was quite lush and green, and there was a huge lake out in front of it. And I guess they were really known for having lots of ducks and fish, and the deer and all the other wildlife would come down to the lake to drink. Now, the Native Americans, this is a wonderful resource to be able to get fish. I guess the ducks were most important, were a huge staple of food down there, not to mention all the other wildlife that would come down to drink, and the water itself. And I guess that area, as time slowly changed, the lake dried out, the plant life went away as it slowly turned into a desert. And kind of like with modern climate change today, things are changing. Areas that were once dry are now lush, and areas that are once lush are now dry. And this is kind of the case. But the dark secret why everybody's here is there's a story about the Lovelock Cave, that there was giants that lived there. And I guess they lived there for a long time. And I guess they lived in relative peace with the Native Americans for times, and then they had problems with them. But at some point, these giants turned cannibals, and they started abducting Indians, and they started eating them, and started doing other terrible things. And the natives really wanted their lake back. They really wanted the area back. They wanted to be able to hunt and fish. And not to mention, they were tired of getting their people eaten and living in fear. So a great battle ensued upon the cave, which I guess the Indians set fire to it. They piled up a bunch of wood. They snuck in and set a great fire and basically smoked the giants out. And for what they didn't get them was smoke inhalation. I guess these giants ran out and were met with hails of arrows, and eventually were defeated. And the Indians basically rolled their bodies back into the cave and went about their business after that. And which is really quite fascinating. Now, if you go there today, it's an open tourist site. I would love to go there. It's just pretty dang far from me, and I'd probably have to combine it with a few other trips just to get a look at what's going on there. Like I said, it's pretty far, and it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere just to make a trip to go see this place. But I'd love to go see it. I guess part of the other aspect of this is the exploration that took place later on. Here's a view of inside the cave. I guess it's got multiple chambers and different sites and different parts. And what's very fascinating is there seems to be an active cover-up of these native stories about smoking them out. And there are stories about when they first... in the early 1900s and late 1800s, when they were rediscovering these caves, they found mummified giant remains, apparently, because I guess this happened long ago. They burnt their bodies, killed them, and rolled them into the cave and just kind of let them sit. And the active cover-up of it. Here's a pretty good picture to give you. See, there's the cave there on the right. And you can just kind of picture in your mind a great big vast lake out there with lots of lush green all around it and probably a forest going out pretty far. And then you can see off in the distance here, slowly in the picture, you can see kind of the city and a little more greener areas, probably where the last bit of water collected, but it was once just a big massive lake with greenery all around. And you can imagine this would be a good place to fight for, not to mention if these so-called cannibal giants, these bodies that they found in there were real. There seems to be an active cover-up of it. They also found lots of other artifacts too. I could just imagine going through there, oh, what's in this old cave, and then discovering all these artifacts, and especially like mummified giant bodies, skeletons 2 or 3 times your size. So here we have a picture of some artifacts that they actually show people. And I guess they found like hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of duck decoys, which I would assume that ducks, if they had bows and arrows and spears and probably other traps, and who knows what ingenious ways they had, but duck decoys are still used to this day. We have a lot of ducks. You put a bunch of decoys out. Flying ducks, they like to associate, so they'll come down and land. And from cover, you can launch some arrows at them, or a net, or whatever your method is of capturing ducks. And I'm sure they got pretty good at it. I'm sure the giants did. I'm sure the Native Americans did as well. And like I said, that's why this was such a vital resource, not to mention fish and all the other wildlife. But if you look at some of the ingenuity and some of the craftsmanship that goes into just even these duck decoys, I mean, it was pretty cool. And the fact that they're still around, there's a lot of craftsmanship here, and just fascinating on its face, much less if you take the whole giant legend out of it. I'm going to say legend. I think there's a lot of, I believe it personally. I think there were giants there. I think if you look at the history of mountain giants in North America and giants all over the place, I think this was one of their strongholds coming out of tens of thousands of years. And I think this was probably one last little group or settlement of giants. Now, what happened to the skeletons and the skulls? I guess they got taken away. I guess lots of people saw them, lots of people documented them, and then they just, like it's classic with the Smithsonian and the government, they suddenly disappeared. They said, oh no, those weren't there, or those were just regular skeletons, or they don't talk about it at all. And it's really kind of a shame. I know why they're doing it, because it challenges the whole narrative. It challenges the history books. It challenges all the things we'll see. And I think if we knew what these giants were, it would really be a part of that. Now, here you see, this was pretty interesting from a few years back. People were talking about it, and I kind of forgot. And when I saw this, I remembered the story. I was like, oh yeah, I remember when they were talking about this, that there were handprints and other prints and markings inside the cave that could only be made. I mean, that's a handprint that's giant, literally a giant handprint. Good evidence of where these things would make a mark on the wall. And they documented this. They took pictures. People saw it. And then a lot of people saw it, and they knew what it was. And then when they came back afterwards, it looked like the whole area where the handprint was had been like sandblasted. It's probably what they did. They probably took a media blaster and blasted it off the wall so no one could take carbon or possible skin DNA samples or just photographic evidence. And I guess one of the only signs left in the cave that there was anything that ever went on was all the burn marks at the entrance of the cave. Now, which is supposed to be where the Indians smoked them out. And I guess a lot of modern excuses, oh, well, people lived in there and then they had fires to get them out of there. If you look across North America, going on into Canada, there's lots of stories and lots of reports of ancient Indians having, and their ancestors having battles with these giants, like the mountain giant stories, even stories of Bigfoots and Indians getting together to fight some of these giants. Because I guess they can leave people alone and be pretty benign. And then all of a sudden, when food gets scarce, or they get old, or they get lazy, or just maybe they do it all along, they start eating people, and they start turning cannibal, and they start killing each other, and they start killing Bigfoots, even some of the stories. And you think about, oh, you know, if this is all up north and the border of Canada going back in there, and up in Alaska where you hear your mountain giant stories, well, America was a very different place tens of thousands of years ago. People have been here. Other creatures have been here. Bigfoots, these dogman creatures. There's all sorts of strange stuff out there. And I think it's completely believable. And I do believe there was an outcrop of these giants that were being bad, and the natives had to take it upon themselves to get rid of them. And I think it just supports all the other mountain giant sightings and other stories. And you hear stories about the Genoskwa, the stone giants, although I think that was a Bigfoot actually. But it all kind of goes hand in hand. It also kind of goes hand in hand with our innate fear of caves and deep, dark places and sinisterness. Even if you look in literary works like Lord of the Rings and some of the other stuff, caves and mines are always a place of mystery and a place of fear. You know, you got to go down in a mine to get your gold, but what's waiting for you in there? And I think there's just something to that. I think there's a bred-in genetic fear of that we have of caves and deep, dark places and underground places. You think of caveman, and I think it's all quite fascinating, and I think it all ties together. So, in short, I think the Lovelock Cave, I think there really were giants there. I think the government covered it up and got rid of artifacts, like people have reported so many times around the world. And I think it's fascinating. If I ever get a chance, I'd like to go out there and get the GoPro out and do a little filming and just spend a lot of time maybe taking some pictures and really checking it out and seeing what we can get and taking a look at the burn marks and seeing if there's anything they missed, although I'm sure they're quite thorough. Anyway, if you like what you see, please hit the like button and please subscribe. It helps the channel out. It helps the videos bump up on the Google algorithm and more people get to see them. Thank you very much, and stay safe in the woods and the deserts.
If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me at unstellar.com. You can also find me at twitter.com at realmattsquatch. This is where I post notifications for new videos outside of YouTube. And I'm also on Instagram. I post other random pictures here too, and sometimes some stuff about Bigfoot as well. And you can always email me at mattsquatchpresents@gmail.com.